Welcome back, guys, to CryptosRUs. I am George. We're all George. So here's another interview with the CEO of Outblaze, but also CEO of Animoca Brands, Yat Siu. And I want to have a conversation with him because he's been in the blockchain industry for a long time, very involved with NFTs. And also he has some projects that have some really interesting things going on, specifically one that I really want to ask about right now. So thanks, Yat, for coming on to the show. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I guess let's just start out with I guess if you could tell us a little bit about your background, how you got involved with blockchain, and what is NFT one of your new passions now?
Sure. I mean, so there's sort of a long version of this, but I'll move very quickly into sort of where we are at the moment. In terms of my background, I've been in the tech space for well over 3 decades, so I'm a little bit of a dinosaur. My first job was actually in the 80s with Atari. I set up one of Hong Kong's first internet service providers in the early 90s, set up an early version of a cloud computing sort of email service provider that was acquired by IBM back before cloud was set up. Back then we called it application service provider. And then we were one of the biggest mobile game companies in 2011, 2012. But we've always sort of tried to be early. That's just an area that I think we find ourselves most comfortable in. And fast forward that a little bit more, having been active in the game, mobile gaming and actually desktop gaming space for a while, we ended up getting involved with CryptoKitties actually very, very early. It was a little bit of a science experiment at first. And then when it just kind of took the industry by storm, we just sort of looked at that and said, wait, hold on, actually, this is really, really interesting, because it actually could introduce scarcity and actual real economic value into digital assets in a way that wasn't possible before. And so we moved really fast into that in sort of late 2017, early 2018. It started off with a investment and publishing relationship with Dapper Labs, which was, obviously now is most famous for NBA Top Shot, but originally for CryptoKitties. Right. And since then, basically just invested in, we've invested in over 35 NFT projects since. We've built up a dozen of our own. And so we basically kind of took a macro view of this. One of the earlier investments we also did was with OpenSea, that recently received some funding from Andreessen Horowitz. We also invested in Wax, in Decentraland, in Axie Infinity, a whole bunch of companies, partially to help grow the ecosystem. So we had very strong conviction to make it happen. And back then, not that many people were investing in NFTs, so There was a lot of faith involved. Yeah.
That's interesting, because I was going to ask you about that relationship with CryptoKitties. I mean, NFTs have been around, since the standard came out, pretty much like years ago. And I think most people forget about Ethereum's, congestion problems have always existed since 2017, and CryptoKitties was one of the contributing factors. So can you explain, what was your involvement with CryptoKitties and the guys behind Flow Labs now?
The history there is that we were actually involved in acquiring a company in Vancouver called Fuel Powered. The co-founder of that business actually ended up becoming one of the co-founders of what would become Dapper Labs, which is also the company behind Flow and NBA Top Shot.
Right.
And in the middle of that acquisition, which was just about to be completed, CryptoKitties basically took off, and he was involved in the construction of that. And is and they're actually his office fuel powered, as well as the office at what was Axiom Z. This is before even Dapper Labs was formed. Basically said, hey, you know what? Rohan was like, to make, why don't you come join me, and we'll create a sort of new co-founding team around basically this non-fungible tokens. And so we came to an arrangement, which was basically we would still complete the acquisition of the company, but he would then be more like an advisor, and we would become partners and publishers and investors. And that was kind of how sort of one thing led to another. And that's our involvement with the earliest days. And we moved very fast because, as you know, CryptoKitties came out in late 2017. We became publishers for our region basically in January of 2018.
Wow.
And we're actively involved ever since. So you could say, in a way, we had pretty much a front row view on things NFT, and we started evangelizing that as well very actively.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. So, not to get ahead of myself, but with this kind of relationship, is there anything that you guys are planning on with Dapper Labs or Flow?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So with we have a very strong relationship. We've worked on a number of things together. We've had multiple announcements, and as you know, we're also investors in Flow and in Dapper Labs, the company, which we're very happy about because it's done super well. But separately from that, we are going to be launching MotoGP collectibles
Nice.
on Flow actually next week.
Nice.
So I think there's hopefully sort of good interest for that.
Mm-hmm.
And also MotoGP is tied into our Revv ecosystem, which is another sort of fungible token that's attached to all of our motorsports games like F1 and Formula E as well.
Right.
And so we're sort of tying that all in together in a nice little way. And I think, certainly Flow has demonstrated how effective it is with NBA Top Shot. And we are the next sports brand coming there. So I'm hoping, we'll have a similar effect.
Yeah. I mean, I think Top Shot's really caught everyone off guard. I mean, because I'm into sports card collecting, traditional physical cards. And that industry had blew up, like really blew up. And Top Shots is like the best of both worlds. You have people that are in crypto and NFTs, and then you have collectors of sports cards combined. And I know so many people ask me, and the wait list to get a new pack is like hundreds of thousands. It's insane right now.
Absolutely.
But leading on to, so that's a good lead into some of the tokens I wanted to talk to you about and some of the projects. For example, your Revv token, which seems to be, a motorsports, play. There's the F1 Delta Time app. You mentioned about Motor GP or Moto GP, and I think there's another one, Formula E. Is that right?
That's right. Yes. So the Revv token was designed really as an ecosystem for motorsports entertainment. And we happened to form a partnership with Formula One, which is the biggest motorsports brand in terms of sort of racing and competition in the world. Has like 1.9 billion viewers, 500 million fans. So it's one of the biggest brands out there. And one of the reasons we actually decided to work with Formula One early, this was in 2019, right, when we first made the announcement, was that we wanted to find a brand that would really help with blockchain adoption. And we thought that a brand like F1, which is, for those of you who know the brand, is it's about racing, and it's also very much about money, right? And so we thought the combination of value and economic systems and money would tie in well with an F1 community that had a stronger understanding of it. And so therefore, it seemed like an obvious connection. So that's kind of how we started doing that. And perhaps, I'm not sure if you know, but we sold the most expensive NFT in 2019 with the sale of the very first car, the 111, which at the time was sold for 415.9 ETH, which of course was a small amount of money, relatively speaking, in terms of value, because it was worth 111,000 US. But in 2019, that was a lot of money for an NFT. Yeah. And the buyer would later reveal himself as none other than Metakovan, the same person who bought the $69 million people. So it was there's a history there as well. So he started collecting valuable stuff back in the early days. He was also the buyer of the most expensive NFT of 2020, which was the Monaco racetrack of the F1 Delta Time game as well. So F1, and the Revv community has had somewhat of a storied history in the world of sort of high value NFTs. And, even the asset sales that we've had recently with like the racetracks and the key sales, they sell out in minutes. It's pretty insane. And I think what we're seeing today is just sort of this, assets that were designed with scarcity of a different model because the world hasn't quite grown in that way. Right. And then suddenly a big explosion of users coming in and sort of buying everything they can, and basically somewhat driving prices up because it's not sort of enough of the sort of decent assets that are out there. So it's a very interesting time. So we're expanding the Revv ecosystem. We did that with MotoGP, which is the second largest sort of viewed motorsports brand with about 400 million viewers. So not too shabby. And it's basically motorbikes, right? So that's kind of a slightly different audience, but somewhat having an overlap.
Right.
And we decided to roll that out on Flow, not just because of NBA Top Shot, but also we thought that it was a way to expand the audience. And so the Revv token will also be able to be used in the Flow ecosystem. So in other words, we have a bridge coming. And for the collectors who have Revv, there will be, maybe not in the first launch, but certainly in the next launch, which is coming soon, there will be exclusive drops only available for people who have the Revv token.
Oh.
So that's all part of a way to sort of ensure that sort of loyal holders get rewarded in different ways.
Nice. And then I also noticed that Revv is also, you guys have a collaboration or at least a partnership with Chili's too, right? Because Revv is tradable on their in-house exchange, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it is unusual in the sense that normally Chili's only puts out tokens that they themselves issue and work with.
Right.
But on Revv, I think they thought that was kind of a good fit, and we know the guys at Socios fairly well and have a good relationship. So they just actually, when we did our IEO, they quickly said, hey, we should just put you guys on as well. I said, that's cool, let's do it. And so next thing we know, like literally within like, like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 hours from our IEO, we were listed on Chili's as well. So that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. All right, so that's Revv. Another one I want to talk about is Sand, because I came across Sandbox not too long ago and looked at it. I'm like, wow, this is pretty developed. Of course, it's virtual worlds. To me, it's almost like a combination of Minecraft and Roblox. It's like my kids are really like addicted to both. So it looks like it's a virtual world. You can buy pieces of land. You can buy items that go into your land. Can you talk about a little bit about the Sandbox?
Yeah, so Sandbox is a great product. It's probably one of our leading blockchain products at the moment. It's quite mature in terms of everything is developed from a sort of a tokenomics as well as from a blockchain technology standpoint, and it's really the vision of what we talked about, non-fungible tokens, and particularly this idea that you can have true digital ownership within all your assets and all the benefits. But in this case, it has a UGC aspect to it, meaning users can generate and create NFTs that you can live and play and work with at the Sandbox. But of course, you can take it out as well because it is, after all, your property. And so there is this tool that allows you to basically create, almost like in a Lego, Minecraft, Roblox type fashion,
right, to
basically make these assets that you can then mint into NFTs. And what Sandbox has managed to do is, virtual land in and of itself is nothing sort of novel. But what they've managed to do is create really interesting experience around the virtual land, where the ownership aspect becomes important based on who owns what. Because now you've got famous companies that have started, like Atari or sort of even Binance bought land, right? Companies like that have basically bought land and basically built their own sort of estate. And then, of course, the estate around it started to become valuable as well, because they're like, oh, I want to be associated with Binance, or I want to be associated with Atari, or I want to be associated with Animoca, or whatever it is. And the value of these assets started to rise, right? And people started to sort of form communities, and then sort of Whale Shark had a sand community, and then Metacoven started buying some as well, and Pranksy, and so the NFT influencers started also buying land and building stuff, and people who wanted association came in. So really, sort of Sandbox has really built a very, what we think a very powerful creator community around that, because people can make their own assets. And you are right, it is like Minecraft and Roblox, but on the blockchain, and from our perspective, on steroids. Because with Roblox you can also make money, and I think the public market cap is somewhere between $40 or $50 billion right now, which is
their IPO was insane.
Yeah, it's an insane IPO. But they tax every sale of an asset 75%, and that's crazy, right? Yeah. So while your kids are playing, making money, right? They actually give almost everything to the kingdom of Roblox. right? And I think and because they're a walled garden, they can do that. But is that really fair? Is that something that is actually sort of scalable? And in our view, that's not right, right? And this is where blockchain and non-fungible tokens come into play.
I had no idea about that 75% tax. That is insane. I want to ask you real quick about Sandbox, because when I looked at it, I looked at the world of Sandbox, right? And I've seen like Atari and Binance, and there's a lot of land taken up. Is that virtual world set, or are there going to be more virtual worlds coming out?
No, that's set. There's a fixed in the white paper. There's a description. There's a fixed set of land that is available to buy. Of course, not all the land has been sold,
right?
But it is there's a fixed supply, and each of the lands are starting to sort of develop into thematics, somewhat unintentional, where certain communities start to form around, kind of like districts, if you will, right? Where certain districts, of certain characters of people or communities start to coalesce around because of who's there or because of what they want to build. So I think ultimately, though, the whole aspect of the land will be developed by the users, and in some ways we don't really know how it's going to be developed because they'll do that themselves. But it's a fixed set amount of land that is available.
All right, awesome. All right, so now I want to get to this I guess new/old project. I think it's very different in terms of it's just the acquisition, and I'm talking about Lympo. And this is one that came out years ago, sports related, or I would say health related, and they kind of just went under. I saw that you guys, Animoca, bought them and turned it into like a gigantic NFT play, where it's focused on athletes and, of course, creating like virtual NFT cards, kind of like Top Shots in a way. There's different kind of cards. There's different scarcities, but there is a lot of question right now about the new token, the old token exchanging. There's 3 different kind of pools too, which seems like certain tokens can stake. So can you first of all, let's go with the new versus old. So the old is the LYM token. So right now it opened up, I think yesterday, in terms of 72 hours to exchange it to the new LMT token. Can you elaborate on that? Why only 72 hours?
Okay, so first, maybe a little history would be helpful.
Okay.
Because, just because of the fact that, Limpo, which was sort of formed, I think, back in 2017, maybe, or even older,
right,
and sort of was one of the projects that at the time sort of rushed out, as many projects did at the time, with an ICO, raised a bunch of money, and had, frankly speaking, even though they were able to bring together an interesting community interested in sports, because that was a thematic, and frankly, that was the reason we thought it could be interesting, because the people who bought Limpo were people interested in sports, and so we thought, well, this could be an interesting user acquisition play for us.
right.
We didn't think necessarily that the value of the ecosystem in terms of monetary terms, clearly that was at that point somewhat broken, but they had built out a community of people who were interested in sports. So we thought that could be a good way to segue into sports NFTs. So that was kind of one of the main reasons we thought of it that way. But also, in the acquisition, when we looked at it, we also recognized that the tokenomics in and of itself was inherently broken, right? Plus, Limpo also had suffered a hack, and all the classic mistakes that sort of many of the companies of their generation struggled and suffered with, is actually something that Limpo experienced. And so when we, if you recall, when we acquired them, I think their token was trading at, way below their ICO price. The entire total market cap of Limpo was floating at like $900,000 to like $1 million. It was really, really, really underwater.
Wow.
And so the other thing that we also saw is that it was listed on exchanges like Huobi and Gate and of these, right? So there was obviously the potential for liquidity and the potential to sort of leverage that from a value standpoint if we could do it right? So that was but unlike our other projects, which we started from scratch and we could do everything that we thought was the right way. Here we had to fix a few things, which is just not that straightforward, right? So it is a bit more sort of, let's call it, damaged than the other projects. Now, we thought, how do we best leverage what exists while also creating value for the existing users and fix the tokenomics? Because if you can't fix the tokenomics, then it doesn't matter what we do. The whole thing will stay broken forever, right? So that's kind of so we set out for that goal and that mission. During the process, of course, I guess people got excited, and we communicated some messages around the new project. And the token, thankfully, has recovered and actually is now well above its ICO price. Right. So that's good, right? So that's kind of an important aspect first. We wanted to make sure that at least if people wanted to get out, they could get out and at least get their money out, right? But the second part was, okay, now it's time to move on to sort of this swap. Why do we do the swap? Well, part of the swap is to ensure that there is a proper tokenomics. One of the reasons you need these proper tokenomics is you need to be able to incentivize, these athletes that we're going to be giving rewards, right? We also have to incentivize the community that is going to be providing services. And for those of you who may not know, Limpo had already spent essentially almost their entire supply. Actually, they didn't have, so what people didn't understand maybe is that when we acquired Limpo, we acquired a company that had no token supply of Limp. Right? Wow. So that's how broken it was, right? That's how broken it was. So obviously we bought some on market to support it. So we actually bought the Limp from the market, and then we created the Uniswap pools. So we paid, first we did the acquisition, then we bought our own tokens to put on market, right?
Did you know that ahead of time though? Did you know that when you acquired that they actually spent all of their tokens already?
Yeah, of course. It was part of the due diligence, right?
Okay.
So, but also we acquired the company for $1 million as well.
Right.
So it wasn't like we acquired them for a lot of money either, right? So if they so the whole thing ended up becoming sort of what we thought was sort of a worthwhile attempt, because the price was not expensive. They didn't have much token. They actually had almost no token reserve, right?
Right.
So all these things together, were the factor, frankly, why Limpo also was sold for, not a very high price at the time.
Right.
And then so we also recognized that we had to buy tokens on market so we could offer liquidity pools and do a lot of stuff, right? So we didn't buy a company that had their own token assets. That's just to be clear, right? Yeah. And I think for anyone who followed the project, they would have known that, because it would have been obvious in the Etherscan. And you can see from the supply, essentially almost all the supply is already out anyway, right? Anyway, so that's kind of that situation. So to fix it, you need to basically swap them into a new token system. So we had a few choices. We could either say, well, we swap everything and just kind of retire the old token, or could we use a Lim in a residual manner that would actually still be very valuable for existing holders? And we thought if there was a way to pair it together with the future of this new token, then it may actually be valuable because there's liquidity, because it's listed on Huobi and listed on Gate and KuCoin, all these kind of platforms that, cost money to list, right? I mean, you don't just, if you go to Huobi and want to list a token, it doesn't usually happen for free, right? There's a lot of work involved and there's money involved. So there's some value there as well to have it as a currency. The other thing is that, there were other ecosystems emerging really fast, that were kind of missing out on the NFT train and really wanted to do stuff. And as some of the audience may or may not know, we actually struck a strategic partnership with Binance.
Oh.
And in that, so that was already announced, right? And as part of this announced sort of strategic partnership was that we would basically help bring, gaming and non-fungible token assets onto Binance Smart Chain, right? And so Limpo is going to be our first project that does that, but basically through the LMT token. So the idea was that we would basically take this new token with the fixed tokenomics and basically bring that onto the Binance ecosystem first, and basically build NFTs there. Of course, there's a bridge, so it allows you to swap, but essentially sort of coming from a sort of Binance first approach versus an Ethereum first approach, which is traditional for NFTs. And then the Lim token basically becomes a currency bridge between the sort of Dapper version of that, which is basically LMT. So it was a way to sort of try to bridge that with sort of correct tokenomics. And if LMT does well in the Binance ecosystem, then there should be a follow-up result with the Lim ecosystem on Ethereum, right? So now what we're also doing is that whatever Lim is being sold into sort of the swap for LMT, which should be viewed almost like a sort of pre-sale. Actually, that's what it is, right? So it's a pre-sale. It's a pre-sale of LMT only available for Lim users. And the assumption here is that you get in early and then hopefully can get the value of coming in from an early sale that is then happening potentially, whether it's a pancake swap or something else, which has also been, basically very successful as well in recent times. So we wanted to sort of tap into sort of a new audience that, was fast emerging. Plus, we had a good relationship with Binance, so we thought we could leverage some of that. So that's the background. And then what we'll do is we'll create, once the price is established, after sort of, there's a discovered price on the Binance ecosystem between for LMT, then the LMT token will be paired through a bridge, basically with Lim back on Uniswap, so that people can then, if they wish to still buy LMT on Ethereum and sort of move and then port it over to Binance, they can, but this time with a bridge that is set up with, the actual discovered price post Binance price discovery and post and because Limbo already will have a discovered price, right? So that's the idea. And
Okay.
so I guess it sounds complicated because it is a little bit because we had to basically fix a complicated situation. So we had to basically come up with what we thought was maybe a schematic that can help fix it. Just to quickly conclude maybe on why the fixing is necessary, because there are questions about, why isn't it a one-to-one swap or this or that?
Right.
Well, it couldn't be a one-to-one swap because there was simply no tokens in circulation that could manage this way. And the second one is, what we're contributing, in our view, what we're contributing to this new Limpo ecosystem is tremendously valuable with, the sports and athletes, and, we signed on Manchester City and all these kind of brands for NFTs. And, Limpo itself didn't have a mechanism in which it could actually pay for that in and of itself.
Right.
And so the LMT structure was going to fix that. Also, as you may know, if you actually list in sort of certain exchanges, then there are fees involved, right? And the fees are usually in their token, right? And again, if there is no token in your reserve for liquidity, then you actually can't expand, right? So the expansion possibilities of the Limpo ecosystems were restricted because of its broken tokenomics. So we had to fix it. The assumption we're making is that LMT would be reasonably successful. Right. And as a result of that success, and our recent token projects, whether it's Revv or Sand or even Tower most recently, have sort of all taken off quite well. The hope is that perhaps the new token with the new tokenomics can do well too. And then, when the people who sort of got LMT instead of Lim would then also basically see the appropriate reward for being patient. So anyway, that's kind of that's the reason why we set it up this way.
Yeah, that was a lot. Thanks for sharing. I think there's a lot of things that I think people don't realize about Limbo that you just shared. All right, so that makes a lot of sense to me. Like you put it like it's almost like a pre-sale right now, because there is a lock-in period where like a third of it you can use right away. A third of it I think is 6 months. A third of it like six. Maybe down the road, right?
Yeah, and just to elaborate, we're not opening a pool right away. The third that you have would basically be used for staking to earn NFTs right into the various pools. So that's why a third is released. But then, of course, when we end up sort of getting some price discovery on the Binance Smart Chain, right, then the holders of those token holders obviously have the option to also, if they wish to, liquidate at that point.
Okay, so there's 3 pools, just to clarify. First of all, the swap is 8-to-1 or 1-to-8, right? From the Limp token to the new LMT token. And as far as doing some research, there's going to be 3 pool, athlete pool, Olympian pool, and exclusive pool, where the new LMT, that token can only be staked in the athlete pool. The old LMY token, Lim token, could be staked in the Olympian pool if you choose not to swap. And then there's another one called exclusive pool, where it seems like, is that also for LMT? Because it seems like Limp had another token called Limp US. So
Limos, yes.
Limbus.
Yeah.
So is
Yeah,
that gonna be airdrop LMT also? Is that correct?
Yeah, so Limos is something that we learned about post-acquisition. So Limos is one of those sort of historical things where certain benefits were offered to Limpo holders.
Okay.
That it's kind of almost like, think of it almost like a VIP tier of Limpo, right?
Oh, okay.
And so that's the background of that. So the pool was sort of established by the Limpo team as a way to sort of pay respect to the fact that there is a VIP class, right? Okay. But the difference is that Limos is not actually something that is going to be issued. I mean, whatever is issued is issued. There is no further. There's no further Limos to be issued outside of what's already out there. Now, for us, just to be clear, this is not, this is just a starting pool. We're going to have many more pools coming out in the future. Because we have many more brands and IP coming out. This is kind of like, just think of this as sort of the beginning of things and get people sort of interested in what's developing. That's the first one. The second one, I think, is that the vision of Limpo is to make it an athlete and sort of sports and health related sort of NFT ecosystem that promotes and celebrates basically all sorts of athleticism, right? So it's not really just the superstars. Of course, with Manchester City or, with Rose and some of the new sort of heroes coming in, these are people who have, maybe more celebrity status, right? You kick it off with that. But, there is a whole ecosystem and universe of sports stars and celebrities that are local, that are heroes in our community. Like, maybe the heroes in our city, or the heroes in our school community, or maybe even the heroes just amongst our friends, right? We have within our network social connections where we say, hey, that's a really good sort of athlete, or hey, look at that sort of 70-year-old marathon runner. He just that's a hero too, right? It's not just the guy who sort of wins a gold medal. They don't get recognition though outside of the community, right? There's no way to truly connect with them. But yet in a real world, in a small community, we do celebrate them, but we can't sort of acknowledge it in a way that we do with the big guys. So Limbo is trying to solve that, basically to provide an ecosystem for all sorts of athletes, big and small. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we should be able to nominate, your local school hero, your township hero, the guy who won, gold medal in, I don't know, the sort of, Orlando race, whatever it is, right? And it's not that they need to be super valuable, right? But in terms of like, again, the headlines are the $1 million NFT sales. Sure, I get that, right? But the world doesn't run on $1 million sales of anything. It runs on the commerce and trade of millions of people making decent income and decent rewards. And that's basically the goal here, to sort of democratize that and provide the same kind of opportunities for people who are athletes and celebrate sort of athleticism, just not, on center stage.
Awesome. That's really well put. Let's put that way. I guess the last thing I want to ask you, actually, that was really it, but I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned this a couple of times, about how hard it is to get added to exchange. Have you thought about coming out with your own marketplace or your own DEX for all of your tokens? Because you do seem to have quite a bit. I'm just curious, is that something that you thought about yourself?
So the only thing I can say about this is that we can neither confirm nor deny any market rumors that are out there. I mean, I think the reality is that, it has come up a number of times where people have said, oh, you should do that.
Right.
Because one of the other things is it's not just, especially I think the recent success of Tower, which I'm not sure if you know much about it, but it's a, tower defense game. And we put that out, and I think it's done like 100x in like 10 days. I mean, it's insane. And we looked at that and said, wow, but it's a great product. It's functioning really well. And sort of it was sort of this experiment between sort of free to play and play to earn. And we didn't do any marketing yet, right? We basically just put it out to our community. I tweeted it, a bunch of people talked about it, and then boom, right? Like, whoa, what happened here?
Wow.
So I think there is this conversation around maybe there's more here. We do have a following. When we did our land sale just 10 days ago, the last land sale, that was $3 million in 5 minutes.
Wow.
When we did our sort of track sale, that was, $2 million pretty much, or $1.8 million in 23 minutes. And the only reason it probably took 23 minutes is because we had a cool down period. People couldn't, because it was a problem when people would just buy too much, right? So in order to find a way to do that, we restricted people to only buy 3 tracks and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff, delay tactic. So there is clearly a demand for people buying our stuff. And then most recently, actually, we're quite glad about this because we are all about interoperability. Crypto Motors as well basically started selling some of their cars in Revv, right? And, these sales gone in minutes. Like, it was like, so I think we're building somewhat of a community there that sort of loves what we do, which we're very grateful for. And we have 2 more token projects that are coming out, which is GAMEE and Quidd. And I'm not sure if you know much about them, but Quidd is in fact the original digital collectible OG. They started digital collectibles in 2016. And they have the license for Marvel and sort of Disney, Game of Thrones and everything. But of course, there was no blockchain back then.
Right.
So it was still a digital collectible, but it was basically sort of the old school digital collectible, and now moving on to blockchain. However, when we acquired them to sort of tokenize them, at the time, they didn't really know much about it. And now the potential is really sort of fulfilling itself if you look at what the NBA Top Shot or what you see on OpenSea happening. And I think in this example here, it's just more examples of how we're sort of transforming sort of existing digital businesses and really realizing and unleashing their potential with blockchain. And with Quidd, they, and GAMEE, both of them started offering cash earnings and cash accounts. And the numbers have really started to shoot up. If you think about, owning a digital collectible from 2016 or 2017, that's actually really old in this space, right? That's even older than the first CryptoKitties and possibly even CryptoPunks. And of course, it's not on blockchain yet in many cases, but it is. It's still a digital collectible. It still has that origin value, and so that's and people are starting to realize that. They go, wait, actually, that is like first generation stuff. That is interesting and precious. And an interesting loop has developed where the people are playing on the mobile app. I mean, if you try it out, it's probably the best collectible experience I can think of that's digital. You use the mobile app to play and farm these aspects, right? And you pay little money to get those coins and tokens to farm these digital collectibles.
Right.
And then they put it on the cash market. And then those who don't have time or are willing to spend for it actually pay cash for, like a rare collection or an interesting set. And it's really blossomed into this incredible sort of ecosystem.
So Quidd sounds very interesting. So to understand you, I mean, one of the first to come out digital collectibles, not in blockchain. Obviously, the plan is to bring that onto blockchain, correct?
Correct.
And then do you still have those licensing like with Marvel and Disney and so forth?
It's there right now. You can trade them right now. Yeah.
Wow, that would be huge because one of the other projects that's really, I think, in NFT space that's kind of gaining a lot of attention is Yakomi, and they happen to have like this DC licensing and a few others. But Quidd seems like Marvel, that's gonna be big. Disney's gonna be big. So, well, very interesting. Very interesting. What about gaming? You mentioned that. What is that involved with?
Yeah. So first of all, GAMEE is our answer to play to earn in a hyper casual context. GAMEE is actually really amazing for a couple of reasons. One, it has over 80 games.
Wow.
So when you go into GAMEE, it's live right now. It's a functioning product, and you can play to earn. And I think most recently they announced they had already paid out close to $3 million in rewards for playing GAMEE. So it's powerful, and it's generating good revenues as a business itself. Has millions of users playing it. So again, it's a sort of pretty strong sort of blockchain mass adoption play that we have here. The other reason why it's so successful is that it is a hyper casual platform. So the games anyone can play, right? So it's not actually difficult to play. You go in and you just play. It's on mobile, it's on the web, and it's on Telegram. So if you're on the Telegram channel, I can basically challenge you to a multiplayer GAMEE game simply by going at GAMEE, and then it comes up with a list of games. So it probably has the most sort of efficient and effective and fun sort of game bot available on Telegram and on other social channels. So that hyper virality aspect is, we think, why GAMEE is so exciting. The token is going to be sort of supporting their own special NFTs that give status updates. But ultimately, what GAMEE is all about, as it is already today with cash, is a way to play and compete and then win rewards for it. And that we think is just going to be supercharged once you put blockchain into it. So that's, in fact, that token is coming out actually probably ahead of Quidd.
Wow. I think that's all the questions I had. I mean, I'm really glad I've talked with you because, you know, Animoca Brands is relatively new to me. But when I started looking into your background, what you guys are doing, all the various projects, you guys are doing some amazing things. I mean, I'm honestly impressed, and I'm really looking forward to all these future projects as well. So, so thanks for coming on. Hopefully, maybe we can chat a little bit later and talk about some updates on some of these projects, and we'll go from there.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you for coming on. And for the rest of you guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel and smash up the like and stay tuned for my future videos. Take care, guys.